Morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker, and I'm here for another constitutional talk. And today I thought we'd take another look at our convention. And I know I've mentioned it before about the Great Compromise, but that's where I want to go today. I want to get into the whole idea that we were dealing with. As you approach the 4th of July, in 1787. I think it was July 2nd. They decided to set up a committee to deal with the impasse they were having. And the impasse was over how they were going to represent themselves in the legislature. As we talked about last month, Ben Franklin had given his speech. He had asked for prayer. It had been pretty much ignored because of the cost that would be incurred by hiring a minister. And at least that's the excuse they gave at the time. It was a brilliant speech, and it was important. A statement is saying that we would have no better luck than the building of Babel. So he really brought into a religious connotation. But on July 2nd, facing the July 4th holiday, they decided to set up a committee, the Committee of 11. They selected by ballot 11 men, one from each of the colonies that were there present. And those men were Gary, Ellsworth, Yates of New York, Patterson of New Jersey, Franklin from Pennsylvania, Bedford, Martin, Mason, Davy, Rutledge, and Mr. Baldwin. And they adjourned until after the 4th of July holiday. And they left the building, all but these 11 men. And they sat and began deliberation over what they were going to do. And the next day they met. The following day was the 4th of July. And when they came back and they spoke to the Committee of the Whole with their idea of having one branch by population and the other and a second branch by a state, a bicameral legislature. This is something that they had discussed this possibility before of a branch with by vote and another the other way. But in the compromise, they also gave the House of Representatives the spending power, the power of the purse. And there was a lot of complaints from men. They're like, what's different to this than what we'd already decided? What we'd already been proposed and what we'd already been knocking around and we couldn't get an impasse with. And the members of the committee said, well, some of us didn't agree to this, didn't really want to do this, but we wanted to bring it back to the floor for discussion. This wasn't meant as the absolute end. It was meant at a point of discussion, and they had to make, like they said, we have to have some kind of compromise or we're going nowhere. So there was the argument that in this compromise, the power of the purse really wasn't very important. Some of the men thought the power of the purse was almost worthless because the Senate would still be active. They could simply go over to their state's representatives and work with them to get get things accomplished. They didn't think the power of the purse was of any great importance. So this is how the arguments went. And in the end, it was a tight vote. But as we all know, our Constitution does have a bicameral legislature with two branches completely different in the way of electing them, in the way of deciding who would be on these branches. The Senate is meant to represent the states, and the House is meant to represent the people. In fact, many times people refer to it as the People's House. The People's House, glowing idea that it would be the People's House, that this is where the people would have their decision. So they wanted the House more like the House of Commons in England. And they wanted the Senate a little more like the House of Lords. In fact, some of the discussions filed the Senate wouldn't even be paid. These people should be the richest, most wealthiest men, they said. And they should not need pay. But the representatives, that was to be more of common folk, regular people. And there were discussions over how to pay them, and that it should come out of the federal government, the treasury of the country, because in only that way would they be actually representing the federal government, because they felt if the states paid, then they would be loyal to the states, that they would be loyal to whoever paid them. This is really an interesting idea, and it's something different from the rest of the world, that we would have this bicameral legislature so differently presented. Our Constitution and the framework decided in the Constitutional Convention is so vital to our way of life, to having things so split up, so that no one man could achieve too much power. This is the entire idea, and this is the promise of our Constitution, of our federal government, that everyone would be equal, that no one would be left behind, that no one could achieve so much power that they would overrun the rest of the country. And this is the beginning. They still had to deal with the judiciary, the executive branch, and lots of duties and principles that would eventually go into Congress. Now I want you to think a little bit about this impasse they had, and how important they thought this branch of government was. They thought that the legislative branch was the most important branch. And they thought that the judicial branch was really the least likely to cause trouble, that it would be the weakest branch. And they thought that the executive would simply be there to administer. They never saw the powerful presidency we see today. So think about what they wanted and how they were working towards our government. And I'll catch you next time on the next Constitutional Talk. You have a good day now. Bye. We'll see you next time on the next Constitutional Talk. You have a good day now.